I think, it's such an interesting balance to try, and as a counselor, your job is to represent the people, right? Back at the council table, but it's also then to represent um the community as a whole, as a corporate body, sort of back to the community. And sometimes that's a very tricky balance to have. And it's hard sometimes when you're looking at things that are in the long term best interests of your community, but have short term pain. And knowing that people are not going to be happy.
Welcome to the Cross Border Interviews, the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on the show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And for today's episode, we are honored to be sitting down and chatting with Town of Calmar Councillor Krista Gardner. On the face of it, small town Calmar is slower and simpler, with a population of about 2,300 and a soft and sweet reputation built upon cultural heritage and best in show floral arrangements. But there's more room here out in the wide open for action and adventure, for business potential, for community revitalization and enhancement, for innovation, and for personal and professional growth and expansion. There's value in Calmar, where you are given free range to not only be, but to be better. Counselor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about your beautiful community. I want to start, though, by talking about you and getting to know the lady behind the persona of counselor, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask a very simple question. Where did your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Krista?
Oh, that is a great question. I grew up in a family that both my parents were teachers. We always had a lot of like volunteer encouragement and all of that kind of stuff. I've said this to Tyler Ganem, the mayor of Wetaskiwin. I started volunteering at about 9 years old in the Wetaskiwin Public Library as a page cleaning books, because the library was sort of my favorite place. And so I've spent my whole life volunteering for all sorts of different things. And that eventually led me to joining the library board here in Calmar when I had stopped working. I had a baby at home. And then there was a by-election, and I thought, how hard can this job be? I should sign up for that too. And that was sort of how I got my kickoff into municipal politics. But it's this like lifelong, you know the drill. It's like 90% of the work is done by 10% of the people. And I've been one of those people to step up and help for things my whole life, basically.
So you get elected in a by-election, but I want to talk about before that by-election for a few minutes, if you don't mind. Had you
Mhm.
ever considered putting your name on the ballot prior to that by-election, prior to having your child? Because you don't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, there's a by-election. I'm going to run in it. Like that's what I'm going to do." Or
Mm,
was it?
yeah.
Like how did your entrance into the political arena come to fruition? Because I can imagine it's not something you just thought about the day before you put your nomination papers in.
Oh, for sure. I think I was like everybody where you live somewhere, you pay the bills, the water bill comes in, you pay it, you pay your tax bill, but really having no idea of what your municipal government actually did. And I think that's really common. There's been a long stretch in Calmar where they'd had a by-election essentially every year or every other year for a long time. And so there had been one probably about a year and a half before that, and before the one that I ran in. So there was an election in probably when did I run? 2016, 2015. And I remember thinking, God, these people are a group of idiots. How hard can that job be? And then being like, I don't know if that's a great plan for me right now. At that time, I would have had a 3-year-old and a 1-year old. And I was like, okay. And then afterwards, I thought to myself, well, God, well, if those are the people that were elected, I could do better than that. And then there was another by-election then the following year, and I was like, hey, you know what? Let's put our papers in, put my name in. And even if you hate it, it would be 14 months. You can do anything for 14 months, even if it's awful. And then if it's not for you, it's not for you. But yeah, so there had been quite a lot of turnover in Calmar. So there were sort of these opportunities popping up more than just every 4 years.
So and I hate to be the guy who has to ask this question, but you have a 3 and 1 year old in the 2015 by-election, but then you have a 4 and 2 year old in the 2016 by-election. Did the family dynamic, and I say that respectfully, change that much in 1 year? Because you still have a young family, you expect it to be a part-time job as a counselor, but now after almost 10 years in
No,
office, it is not a part-time
no,
job.
no.
When you officially said, okay, I'm going to do it, did you look at the family and say, my husband's going to have to pick up here, my family's going to have to pick up support? Or were you able to balance those two dynamics when making that final decision? And again, for those who are about to send me emails saying I'm asking a very sexist question to the female counselor here, I apologize. She brought it up. I just need to know, because there's probably going to be one person asking me, why didn't you ask that question, Chris? So anyway, go ahead, Krista.
Yeah, I mean, for sure it's a question that like nobody would ask a male candidate sort of the same thing, even if their kids are the exact same age, right? But I wouldn't say that having my kids be a year older made particularly a difference. I do think for me, they say on average that you have to ask a woman 8 times before she's willing to run, whereas men you generally don't even have to ask. They just decide to go ahead and do it. And so to really get those gears going around, okay, well, what does the job look like? It turned out actually at the time when I ran in the by-election, my direct neighbor was on council. He was one of the people then that had ran in the previous by-election. And then 2 doors down from him was also on council, and on my street, I had two previous mayors. We're a very prolific public service block in Calmar. And so I went and asked him, like, what is part of the job? And he sort of explained how the pay looked, what the time commitment was. I think you have an excellent point about how when what they tell you the time commitment is and what the actual time commitment are never line up, right? It was substantially more work than what I was anticipating. But operating under the assumption of like, let's try this out. 14 months is not, it's not 4 years, right? And if it's terrible, you just don't run again,
Yeah.
right? So that was sort of my mindset. I think my husband is supportive, but he works a lot. He works very hard. I always say that like he's actually supporting our family. This is my fun activity because Calmar does not particularly pay well, right? As most small towns. I think we're actually maybe a little bit better off than lots of communities our size, but it's not something that pays well. It really is a labor of love. And so he's been very supportive of me going out and doing some of these things. And although he has 100% said to me, really, I don't care about town things. Please stop talking to me about this. Can we talk about something else? He has said that before. So yeah.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it's tough being.
So this is a unique time that we're recording this interview, because this year is 2025, if I'm doing my math correctly. It's been a long day. It is 2025, and in October we have a very important date that is coming up, and that is October 20th, 2025, where the next municipal elections in the province of Alberta are going to happen. Now, I should also mention that in July there is also other elections that are going to be happening, but they are for summer villages in the province of Alberta. So there is two different election dates for municipalities in the province of Alberta, one in July, one in October. But let's talk about the October one for a second, because you are a town, and that is when you are going to go to the
Yeah.
ballot box. There are going to be people watching this and listening to this going, why should I put my name on the ballot? What was the checklist that you put into place prior to putting your name on the ballot finally, that you said, these are the things that I had to check off before I put my name on the ballot, that you hope other people go through and say, am I the right person to be a counselor? What were your sort of requirements for yourself that other people can look at and say, oh, I have that quality. Maybe I should put my name on the ballot.
So that's a really good question because I would say what those checklist sort of items were for me in 2016 versus what those checklist items are for me now are very different, right? Having an understanding of what the job actually entails. I I will say I ran there was sort of a niche issue in Calmar at the time when I first ran in 2016 related to our fire department and being a person who um
Were you a one issue
prioritizes.
candidate?
A kind of, yeah. But it was kind of a one issue election
So
to be fair.
So for those who don't understand what
Um,
I'm talking about, anyone who's listened to the show before, I've chatted with many municipal leaders who say never be a one issue candidate because the moment you solve that issue, you literally sit around for the
I
next
know.
few years or few months, a few days doing nothing. But you're a
Yeah.
self-described one issue candidate. So how did that transition from
Yeah.
being a one issue candidate to being the counselor for your community happen? Was it easy or was it actually challenging? We're
Oh,
all we're all
okay.
over the place right
This
now, and I apologize. It's just
I
I've
I
never
know.
had a self-described one issue candidate on this show.
It's like I shouldn't have admitted to that. Um, it's funny because I am I don't know how I would describe this. I'm a person who loves a challenge.
Yeah.
You can't tell me I can't do something. I will go out and find a way to make it happen. And and I think that one of the things I shouldn't admit to this either on something that's broadcasted. Somebody in our administrative team right after the election said to me, "You're just going to sit there and keep your mouth shut for at least the first year." And then you'll learn things and then maybe you can participate. And I was like, heck no.
Thank you for
That's I mean, it's
PCing
not the
that
way
for
I
me.
Mhm. And I think that so having run with this idea of some of the issues involving our fire department and what we were going to do about that really transitioned to me because I was saying this earlier, really unaware a lot of what your municipal government actually did, what your council actually did. Um, but and I don't want to say it was easy, but maybe pleasantly surprised by the depth and breadth of municipal issues, of the ways in which you touch the lives of the people in your community. And I really think of myself as a person who rises to the challenge. So when you talk about how like it's a part-time job, but is it? There are people who do keep it a part-time job, who come in, who maybe read their packages beforehand, show up at the table, put their hands up and leave. That's not really the way that I've operated over the last 9 years. And so that would be one of the things on my checklist now that I really had no understanding of then is, are you prepared to do the extra work? Are you prepared to go out and do the listening to your community? Are you prepared to be open-minded and not come in with like a set, this is the way I'm going to vote, or this is what we should do, and let yourself be persuaded. Some of the other, I think, really top skills I think that a good local elected official has are around being persuasive in making your argument. Are you good at speaking to groups? Are you good at hearing what they're saying and taking that information in and condensing it into a worldview? um are you good at public speaking? Are you like, there's all those kinds of things. Can you read well and have strong reading comprehension, because there is so much papers and things you have to read, right? That's one of the things I think that I was really surprised by, is like the volume of stuff that comes across your desk, right? So if that's not something you're interested in, and especially in smaller communities, you don't get paid for that time. So like that would be a big thing that I would say, like, are you
But
prepared to handle those kinds of things?
but on the flip side, and I just want to make sure that people don't think that you have to be knowledgeable, you have to be an expert in 100% of the things, because you
No.
do have an administration there that is
Yes.
very well equipped to do what they're supposed to do to
Yes.
inform council.
Yes.
Yes, you have to make the ultimate decision, but administration is there as well to give you some feedback into that decision making, right?
For sure. For sure. And I'm saying more, have you read all of the things they've given you so that you can ask smart questions? Because I don't think, I mean, even in my council right now, I don't think we always have people who fully read their documents. They're going to be like, why are you
Okay,
calling us out like that,
I'm
Krista?
gonna call someone out here, but not by name. But I was just recently at a convention somewhere in Western
Hmm.
Canada. This mayor had been elected about 8 times and openly admitted he does not read the agenda packages anymore because he is not there to read them. He's there to be informed by what the CAO reads to him when they're going through all the motions. And I went, okay, maybe that's time to leave.
Not That's so funny because we always, when we present agenda items and then we say, okay, CAO, what do you have to say about this? And then he basically says verbatim, what's in the introductory. I'm like, I've already read it. Can you add more value, or you get 30 seconds and then let's move on, because I don't want to hear you read what I've already like, right? So that's sort of a
So,
funny point.
okay. You talk about the decision making, and the decision making I probably would imagine is probably the hardest part of the job because you're the one who has to raise their hand. You're the one who has to vote yay or nay on particular motions. And the motions that you vote on are impactful. Budgetary items means that people's property taxes are potentially going up. School road closures means that businesses could be affected. Changes to recreational programs means that kids may not get free programs that they used to. At the end of the day, I'm not saying that all decisions are that, but there are lots of like that. How do you, and I say you as Krista Gardner, the counselor, not as council as a whole, but yourself, make those tough decisions knowing that, and I can imagine you know this after 9 years, 100% of your community is never going to be fully behind your decision making.
Yeah. I think, it's such an interesting balance to try, and there are, as a counselor, your job is to represent the people, right? Back at the council table, but it's also then to represent um the community as a whole, as a corporate body, sort of back to the community. And sometimes that's a very tricky balance to have. And it's hard sometimes when you're looking at things that are in the long term best interests of your community, but have short term pain. And knowing that people are not going to be happy. And I mean, we're in the thick of tax notices being mailed out here in Calmar. The local rant and rave is full of people who are unhappy with things. And actually, it's a funny story. Is there's a suggestion of someone that they want to start a tax reduction committee, and I was like, all the power to you. I will chair that committee. Come on in. We will go through the budget and we will talk about the $30 million of infrastructure deficit that we have, that we need to be addressing year over year over year in order that you have water. Like, and I know there's this idea that council is spending so much frivolous money. I would challenge anyone that says those kinds of things, and a lot of times they say it in regards to cities, but you give me $1 in a small town and I will stretch that dollar so far, because we have no choice but to do that. And so I, a lot of times when you're taking in that information and you're looking at, the costs, you're looking at the benefits, you're balancing those things out, and then thinking about, I often think about this, like, how is this defensible to the public? How are we going to communicate this back about why it was the best choice? How are we going to address some of those things? And I do a lot of my own social media kind of work and stuff, and conversations with the public, like this. And the problem is that none of this stuff fits nicely into a Facebook post. It's not captured well in a meme when you're talking about, risk benefit analysis,
But
or we have to do this, or we won't have this 5 years from now. Like, that kind of stuff gets really challenging. And I think for the most part, it's well received. And even coming from the perspective, like, I don't like paying taxes. I also live here. I also pay taxes. This also affects me. And to be able to do that, it's tricky. It's a tricky balance for sure.
okay, so there's about five things I want to pick up on that last statement that you just made, but I want to start with the big one. In my conversations of doing this show for about 5 years now, I have come to the realization that there is an apathetic nature. We are more reactive than proactive when it comes to municipal politics. As a community, as a resident, we're more reactive. Unless it's a major issue we truly believe in, we will be proactive. I remember the setback issue around legalizing cannabis in business in
Mm-hmm.
municipalities. A lot of
Yep.
people were very proactive on this. But when it comes to issues like budgets, like property taxes, we're very reactive. Now I see that my taxes have gone up 13% or
Yeah.
5% or 2%. So because we wait until we see what the actual bill is going to be because we don't truly understand. Now you do understand because that's what you're kind of hired to do. As an elected official, you're there to understand how your assessment value impacts the property taxes, impacts how much money you're going to have to collect. And I'm not even adding into the fact the educational portion of the property taxes, which you have no control over. And that is going to cause a bigger headache as we're about to send out tax notices. And then on top of that, we have a Canada Post strike that is coming up as of recording this that could even hurt you even more. So there's a lot of external factors that are going on here. How do you, as a counselor, ensure that you get your residents' input on issues? Because if you're a counselor and you're just getting what administration is wants, that's very one-sided because they're there to ensure that they believe what they have to follow the rules. But there are people in your community who will probably say, well, I want this, I want that. How do you balance that sort of resident perspective with administration perspective, and who ultimately wins? Is it always administration? Is it always council? Is there a mix? How do you make those decisions with both competing sort of voices?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely competing voices there, right? And
Sometimes, not all
I
the
think,
times, I should say.
right, fair enough. I won't say that it's an always or never conversation. It's like each individual thing. I think, it's interesting. I've sat on the Alberta Municipalities Board now since, oh goodness, 2022. And that exposure to like the wider world of municipalities has been really helpful to me in terms of like asking good questions. Have you considered this? Have you reached out to these people? Have you, because I think even, as counselors particularly, it's easy to get very myopic on like just my community. This is the way we've always done things. This is what I'm hearing from this one very vocal group. And I think it's easy even to do that probably from an administration perspective, that it's like, this is the way we've always done things. This is how we're, and so that's been really valuable for me in terms of having that wider viewpoint to come back and say, okay, well, let's consider some of this. Yes, I agree that that's true. But I also agree that this is true. How can we balance some of these things? I am probably, my dad would kill me if I didn't say this. I'm probably the only person on our council that regularly says, okay, but what about the taxpayer? What about, because this is, he like rides me pretty hard about, being the government. Um, which is
Your
which is
your
really
big
nice. And
brother,
he's
come
like,
on,
they're all
er.
wasteful and the whole thing. And I'm like, actually, let me walk you through how all of this stuff works. He doesn't actually, funny stories. He doesn't live here. He lives in Wetaskiwin. I'm from Wetaskiwin. And so I always joke to Tyler Gandam that he actually should be paying me for doing his community outreach work for him. So he doesn't have to talk to my dad. And, and so like, like, okay, we look at all of these things and it's easy to get maybe disassociated from the impact of the decisions you're making because you're like, okay, it's 10,000 more dollars. Okay, that's in our budget, that's not a huge amount of money. Okay, the overall budget is going to be $7 million. Okay, this is the money we need to do all these things, but what is the actual impact to the person? And I think it's important to keep that as a like a bottom line idea in the back of your head when you're making these decisions, because administration is telling you what's best for the community as a whole, but it doesn't necessarily always keep in mind that granular level of what does it do to your lower income people? What does it do to the people who are living in a great big beautiful house but are maybe house poor essentially, right? Like, and are stretching to pay the bills every month, but yeah, they live in a great big beautiful place backing onto the lake, but they're tapped in terms of money. Like, and that comes up a lot when you're talking about like, what does our community actually need for recreation? What does our community actually need for social services? To take it out of that like high level theoretical standpoint and bring it down to actual individual people and the impact it makes on them.
Now, I'm very cautious of time. I just realized we're almost at the half-hour mark, and I haven't even gotten to segment 2 yet because that's the great thing
Oh
about
no.
these conversations.
Sorry.
But I want to ask one last question before we go into the next, and that is about the community as a whole. The life of a counselor is not a part-time job. We talked about that, but the
Mhm.
role is not part-time either. The moment you step outside your house, you are on 24/7. You are a counselor when you go get groceries, when you go pick up a coffee, when you go to a
Yeah.
community event with your kids, you are a counselor. And I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard from numerous people that when you go to events and you're with your kids and your spouses can often say, okay, I guess mom or dad are not going to be here because they're going to be dealing
Yeah.
with counsel. Have you been able to strike that balance of being mom and wife with being counselor and just being Krista from time to time? Because you don't want to get burnt out, because more people who get burnt out from this job means that more
Mm.
good people like yourself don't get to be involved in this job. How do you balance the role with just being yourself in your community?
I mean, that's a fair question. I don't think I've been to a social event in Calmar in the last 9 years where someone hasn't asked me something about town business. What's happening with this? What's with that? Are you going to run for mayor? Like all of this, it never ends, right? And I think that some of those lessons that I've learned around things where it's like, hey, I really appreciate your concerns right now, but I'm actually at the garden center with my kids. And can I email you back, or can you tell me what your questions are and I'll get back to you because now's not really a good time. My husband is actually really good at stepping in on those kinds of things because he does not care if they like him or not. Whereas
They're
like
not
it
voting
is a
for
little
him.
bit different, right? Like, and it's a little bit different for me to be like, because he'll be like, man, not the time, like not the time and place. Like, he'll say things like that. I don't say that. I say, oh, it's great, let me get back to you or whatever. But it's a tricky balance for sure to feel a little bit like um you're in a fishbowl sometimes because and I'm a noticeable person, I think, walking around with my hair in the, like I think that's, I think I stand out a little bit. And so I know you're laughing. Um, it's sometimes that's a challenge, but I think it sort of comes with the job, right? And I take the role pretty seriously. And I'm good at having the answers for a lot of things on like the tip of my tongue and just being able to say things. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to be able to do that. It's 100% okay to say, you know what, I don't know what the answer is to that. Let me get back to you, or can we follow up on this later, or any of those kinds of things.
Do the kids enjoy the fact that mom's a counselor? Do they use it in their school day? Well, my mom's a counselor, so she can do things. Or are they so out of tune with what the politics of Calmar is?
I don't think they're really into it. I have heard my kids say to other people before, my mom's the boss of Calmar. Like, please don't say that. My daughter, when she was younger, used to play meetings with her stuffed animals. So
Oh,
I'm like, I don't know if that's quite the
raising them
dream I was
well.
hoping for you.
Well, I want to turn to my next segment. Before I do this, I want to preface this line of questions with the following. This is a conversation between the counselor and myself. This is not a motion of counsel, not a direction of counsel, not a policy of counsel. This is the counselor's opinion and her opinion alone. It may line up with what's being talked about at council, but at the end of the day, she needs a majority of votes to either vote for or against a motion, direction, or policy that would be passed at council or defeated at council. With that being said, in your opinion, counselor, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Calmar today, as of recording this at the end of May 2025?
I mean, my ongoing issue with municipalities across the board, so not just Calmar, but specifically for Calmar, is lack of funding from the provincial government and then increased downloading of costs, right? We're policing now the provincial property tax. It's not actually an education tax. It's a provincial property tax that was a 10% increase in Calmar. We intentionally did not, we actually dropped our mill rate and carefully managing stuff in the budget to accommodate that, knowing that that's a big jump just on that factor alone. And everything else, we get less dollars than we used to, and things cost more. And we have this, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, is this like overarching infrastructure deficit that we have. I don't know that the rest of my colleagues, despite me sort of banging the drum about this, have the same sort of, worry about it. But that's the reality, is that funding. And so when people don't understand why their taxes go up, it's not even really about increased programming or inflationary costs. It's because we're trying to tuck every dollar we can into reserves to fund a lot of these projects that have to be completed. So that would be my big thing, is about funding, how the province is funding us, what they're doing to add things to our bill. It's not great.
Okay, so we talked about some good stuff, but I have to ask some political questions with that statement, if you don't
Mhm.
mind. Um,
Yep.
Yourself, like myself, property taxpayers. Now, I understand this because I follow municipal politics more than the average person in Alberta. I understand that you put away for the rainy day, but when I pay my taxes this year, which I'll be doing once I get my property tax bill, I will hope that some of that money will be used towards something that I will use or I will actually
Mm.
benefit from. I understand that what if I turn on my water tomorrow, I'm happy that I paid my taxes last year because the water comes out clean, safe, drinkable, but also that I can use the shower. How do you ensure that you don't build Calmar for 2030 on the backs of the people here
Mhm.
today? Because while it's great to worry about the infrastructure projects, which I believe we should all be doing, we also have to be worrying about the people who are here who are struggling. How do you balance it?
Yeah.
How do you find that council has been able to do it sustainably without being harsh to the people who are in the community?
Mhm. So one of the realities right now in Calmar is that we basically don't have reserves. So the money that we are taking in this year will literally fund next year's projects. So we're not talking about funding things 20 years from now, right? The people that are living here today, um, and I think that we're about, of the money we collect in taxes, it's probably 10% maybe, not actually, probably not even that, in terms of what is that reserve funding. So much of the stuff goes to like your day-to-day activities. It's pothole filling, it's sidewalk replacement, it's ongoing programming, it's grass mowing, it's like the actual work they do right now out, at our sewage lagoons, or managing our water systems, all of that kind of stuff. So we're not funding, I'm not taking dollars and saving them forever. And I think that you have a really good point, because this is, at our council we've had a discussion about philosophy related to debt. And so are you borrowing funds versus are you collecting reserves in advance? And how do you balance some of that? Whereas like if you're building it with borrowing right now, the people using it right now are paying for it, right? In that debt servicing capacity, versus saving all this money now and these people don't get to use it. So like I totally get what you're saying. We're just not really in a place where that's a huge concern right now, because we are sort of constantly being like, what are we going to do next year? What's the next urgent thing?
So
And keeping sort
what
of
is
doing
the
that.
next urgent thing? So what is the thing that Calmar is looking at right now in 2025? I know you've passed your budget because you can't send out
Mm.
tax notice without passing your budget. So you've passed your budget. What is the thing that the long-term viability of your community is based on with this budget that you've just recently passed? Is there something that you look into and say, okay, we got this through because this is what needs to happen to set up potential growth or potential additions into our community 10, 15 years from now? Because while you're not looking in the forefront, you kind of have to look at the forefront as well, because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if you become stagnant, then I'm going to burst everyone's bubble here. For those who are listening, please write to Chris Brown, not Krista Gardner, on this this statement. But 0% tax increases are not good for communities. They just aren't,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to grow, you need to add, and no matter what, the cost of doing business is always expanding with inflation. And how do you see yourself growing the community with the budget that you just passed?
So in saying that,
Or
we
do
have a
you?
number of things. Well, I think we do. We were supposed to, originally projected we were going to be doing a road project this year that was half this year, half next year, and we decided to move it to next year to save the additional mobilization costs, which we're going to add another $250,000 to the project. So instead of being $2.2 million, it was going to be $2.5 million. Okay. I mean, and I think that people are unaware of how much it actually costs to do some of these kinds of things. Like that's two what a little like longer than average blocks of roadworks and sidewalks and curbs, curb and gutter. $2.5 million. Okay. So we've moved that into the future, but part of that was because we had a number of things. We had, aerators for our lagoon systems that have to be purchased because we need to do that. We had pumps for some of our stormwater things that needed to be purchased. Our street sweeper lit on fire last year. We tried to contract it out. Yeah, I know that's a thing. Apparently it was flaming going down the road. I don't know. I didn't actually see it and no one has video, but it was the insurance payout. And a new street sweeper was going to cost $500,000. And so council had originally said, no, we're not going to replace that. We will contract. And we heard from our people that they didn't like it because normally we send our guy out, to do Main Street, even though Main Street's a provincial highway, it's not actually our responsibility, but it gets dirty and the businesses complain. And we send Eddie out in the street sweeper a couple extra times a year, or whatever. And so people weren't happy last year with the level of service related to that. So this year we found a deal because we are about stretching our money on getting a street sweeper for $300,000 instead. And then our big project is actually a road extension that by the time we do, we've applied for a grant that is $4.5 million to bring this road from the northwest side of town. It curls around our elementary school and will eventually open up 400 doors in our community, which is a big deal. We have about 900 houses right now. $4.5 million though to do that work. And the water system is already there because when they first started this subdivision, they had to loop the water system. So that's just road and sewer. That's it. $4.5 million. But we're doing the first chunk of that this year. And that's a big project just in there. And that's going to open up access to some stuff on the north side and then another, I think about 60 lots. And Calmar's growing. We've had a number of subdivisions lately. We've got houses, any empty lots that we basically had in town are filling up. People are buying them and building houses on them. And that's great for us because that's existing infrastructure that we already have. We're already servicing, we're already plowing the road in the winter. So we're doing some of this stuff where you're trying to have this balance between what do we need to operate today? What can we add to people's quality of life today? Plus, how are we planning for the future? And those are often conflicting priorities, right? So, and trying not to, you can have anything you want if you'll pay for it, but we don't want to just dump that on the taxes and on the people that live here, right? So
while every community in Alberta and Canada has their challenges, which it sounds like Calmar is not unique in the sense that you are the only one dealing with infrastructure. You might be the only one dealing with a burning street sweeper as it's going down your. I wish someone had video on that because I'd post that right now.
yeah.
One thing that you do have going for you, and this is where I want to sort of flip the original question of challenges to accomplishments to the things that go right. And before I ask this question, because I do a little bit of research on the community before jumping into this interview, and there's something on the Calmar website, and I want to read it out here. I read at the beginning of the interview for the introduction, but I want to just put it on the record. There's room here out in the wide open for action and adventure, for business potential, for community revitalization and enhancement, for innovation, and for personal and professional growth and expansion. There's value in Calmar where you are given free range to not only be, but to be better. What does that mean to a councillor of your community?
We had done at the end of the last term, we had done all of this branding work where we came out with our new brand. And this is part of, the copy out of that brand. And it was such a fascinating experience for me. We did a ton of public consultation. We did a ton of staff consultation around like who is Calmar, right? And so all those things, that you say there, I really see as this like culmination of policy work, of community development stuff. We are situated. We are now 8 minutes from Leduc with their expansion to the west, and 15 minutes, thanks to Edmonton's annexation of a big chunk of Leduc County, 15 minutes to the southwest side of Edmonton. We're situated on a high-low corridor. We have rail access. We have water availability. We have a council that is willing and excited about working with development. We are looking to grow And I think that we're doing that in a way that maintains that small town charm, that has that, opportunities for families to do things. We have two fantastic schools. They're opening a new collegiate program at our high school in September. There are lots of fantastic things happening in Calmar, and they're not by accident.
So
You know,
what do you
I
chalk that up
really
to
feel,
then?
um, I think especially this last 4 years, we've had really a growth focused council. We have done the bedrock work around policy development. We've changed a lot of the ways that we are working with development. We have
Can I just interject
and I
here for a
think we've
second?
gone absolutely, yeah.
Because while understandable that the council is doing great work, and it sounds like they are, that statement that I just read sounds like a good vision statement for what the community is and what the community should be. But there has to be buy-in from the community as well.
Mm,
There has to be buy-in from residents. And with that type of statement, it sounds like people want Calmar to be a place where people want to come to. Like I know you're, according to your website, you're about 2,300 residents right now. Like I can imagine that people are excited to see more growth in your community, to see more people come to your community. While they want to keep the small town feel, they want to be better, even in your statement.
yeah. Yeah. I think, we've done like, and as an example, when we've done a lot of this work, it's informed by conversations we've had with our existing business community. How do we encourage them to help them grow? What is their feedback about what we need? What are we missing? How can we help you, like help us help you? So we've done that work with our existing business community. We've done a lot of work on a regional scale with our surrounding communities, with Leduc County, with the city of Leduc, on trying to promote our region. I personally do a lot of work. I have 3 kids. They're all now currently in school in Calmar, either at the elementary school or the junior senior high. I am on the school council at both. I'm attending things with the PTA. I do a lot of that outreach work, like getting feedback from stuff. And we have a whole council who does a lot of those kinds of things. We recently in October, did our first resident satisfaction survey and budget engagement. And people, and it was interesting because they did a lot of work around, would you be willing to accept higher taxes for, enhanced service provision, or for infrastructure investment, or or no, like, and breaking out all of those pieces, and got good return from that. So I think we are going out and doing the work to make sure the community is on board. Like, is this the right track? Do you agree with this? And I think the answer is yes. So it's not just council saying, hey, we should do these things. It's lots of that kind of engagement work about, like, do you agree this is the right path or not? And the answer is like, okay. So then we've gone forward with that.
Again, cautious of time here, and we're almost coming up at the hour mark. And I've got two last segments that I want to introduce here. And one is something that's just unique for Alberta municipality guest, and you are one of them. So I've got to ask. We talked about the upcoming October election. Have you made your final decision yet if you're going to be running for re-election? You don't have to say if you have or not, but I've got to put it on the record. Have you made that decision? Are we going to see Councillor Gardner's name back on the ballot this year?
I haven't put my papers in yet, but yes, I would say I'm 95% sure that I'm going to be running. And until they go in there, it's not 100%, but that's the
Okay.
plan anyway.
So the follow up, the 95% follow up to that last statement then is, what does Calmar look in 4 years' time if you're reelected to council?
So this is a big chunk of why I would want to come back, is I think there are so many things that we are on the brink of in terms of growth. I would be really excited to see what comes out of the next federal census. I personally think our population is substantially higher than that 2,300. They actually said in our federal census it was about 2,100. I was like, how did we lose people? So I think we're going to see pretty substantial growth. I think we're going to be seeing year over year building and things like that happening in Calmar. We have some big plans related to recreation projects. And this feels like there were lots of things. They always say that like economic development is like planting seeds, right? And maybe eventually something comes. I think in the next 4 years we're going to see sort of the fruits of that labor start to come through. And so I really want to be a part of that, about guiding where that specifically goes. I'm really excited. Calmar has a bright future.
It certainly does,
Come to
especially.
Calmar.
I certainly will. Well, and that leads into the very final segment of this show. As you know, I like to visit communities. I like to travel. I like to visit communities. I like to take photos of their community signs because that's what kind of a nerd I am when it comes to municipalities. But as this is coming up to the summer of 2025, I'm assuming there are major events that happen in Calmar during the summer months when people get together for block parties, for festivals. People might be listening to this all across Alberta and Western Canada right now. Why should they make the trip to Calmar if they come out to Alberta? And what can they do in Calmar when they're there?
Oh, so Calmar is a fantastic place to visit, just to stop by. I hear a lot of times people are like driving out to Wizard Lake or Pigeon Lake and you stop in town. We have our historic Calmar Bakery since 1951. If you're looking for hot dog buns for your camping trip, or if you want the world famous donuts, I will buy you a donut, Chris, if you come by. We have
New best
we
friend.
have
Sorry,
two antique
Tyler.
shops. I bring donuts to all sorts of things as like a gesture of goodwill. Enjoy my community. Come back and have some more. We have antique shops. Our sort of key premier event during the summer is Calmar Days. It's the third weekend of August. We have like we have movie in the park. We have this what they call the mega market, which is this like self created thing. The town actually doesn't do anything with it. The entire line of Main Street, so about 3 blocks plus going down the side roads and stuff, is full of vendors of like just fascinating stuff. Like people come with all kinds of things. And so we have that. There's a children's section, there's a parade, there's the pancake breakfast, multiple pancake breakfasts, there's all kinds of things happening. Most of it is free. Fireworks at 11 o'clock. There's a ball tournament. There's beer gardens. It's sort of all across town. People often hold garage sales because there's all these people. We usually get thousands of people coming. It's a really great time. So if you can come out during the third weekend of August, that's a real showcase, I think, for our community. And otherwise, we're just during the summer, lovely. If you want to come out for a drive, stop for a great cup of coffee at Is Good Coffee Bar and More. Enjoy one of our restaurants. Stop into the antique shops. Enjoy one of our park spaces. There's an ice cream stand with a lineup usually down the block, like all of that kind of stuff.
Is
Happy
there
to have you anytime.
I will come back for the third weekend in August because I have nothing planned for August so far because that's when we take our show hiatus. But I've got to sort of ask the Sophie Choice question because while you've just mentioned some very great community spots, community businesses, is there a place that you can go in the community after a long day of council meetings, after a long day of work, being mom, being wife, being Krista? Is there a place in the community you can go and just decompress after a long day and just recenter yourself, knowing that tomorrow morning you're going to have to get back up and try to make Calmar a little bit better than you left it the day before?
So are you asking if we have a good pub? Because we do. If
Is
that's your
it
decompression place.
is that your decompression place?
Sometimes my husband and I, my kids, my oldest is turning 13 today. It's very exciting. But having him be old enough to essentially babysit my other two, we will often now go for a walk. It's about 2 blocks down to the local pub. It's called Route 39. The owner is fantastic. There's music on the weekends, there's karaoke if you're into that. There's always the game on, whatever. We'll go down and get some snacks, have a beverage or two, and then walk home, which has been actually a really nice thing to not have to like schedule a babysitter and like all of that kind of thing. So like that's a really great place to decompress. Or we have great walking trails if that's like a thing that you're into. I do that. I've got a dog. He's a Westie. I can hear him a little bit yipping in the background, but taking him out for a walk, spending time with friends, going out and, helping with various things. Or sometimes it's hiding in my basement with a good book, right? That's
But
probably my best decompression thing is I talk a lot in my work life. Maybe I should not talk so much at home.
okay, you mentioned my second favorite subject, and that outside of municipalities is books. What's your go-to book right now? What are you reading right now as we're talking? Because I need to know what my next books are going to be because I'm almost done my current book and I need a good recommendation.
I don't know if this is something you would really love, but for popular fiction, Emily Henry has a new book out. She's written a number of like sort of funny rom-com-esque things, but called Great Big Beautiful Life. And the funny thing in it was the male love interest, I don't know, is talking about the impact of having to grow up in a small town with his dad as the mayor and feeling like he always had to be perfect. And I thought, wow, isn't that a really interesting viewpoint that I don't know if my kids, I'm going to talk to them about that. Do they feel like there's a spotlight on them because of my sort of public role? And I kind of think they don't, based on the way my daughter dresses. I think she doesn't care what anybody thinks of her. But I thought that was such an interesting tie-in to what so if someone's looking for a beach read, I would recommend that. I think Emily Henry writes some good things.
I will have to check that out, and it might be my beach read this summer when I'm crisscrossing Western Canada. Final question before I let you go, and it's the $1 million question. It's the question that I think you've encapsulated, but I need the elevator pitch now. What makes Calmar such a unique place to live, to work, and to raise a family?
I mean the cliched thing is it's the people, right? Everybody says that. And I think we have great people across the entire province. So Calmar's not special in that, but we do have great people. We have great involvement from our businesses. We have so many special things about, proximity to the airport, proximity to the city, all sorts of stuff like that. But one thing I want to highlight that I don't think I've talked about, you sort of mention it in that pitch that you read. The light here is different. Like there is something about when the sun is setting in Calmar, it is not the same as it is in Leduc, even though Leduc is 10 minutes down the road. Like I don't know if it's that because we're surrounded by farm fields and you sort of get that glow in the sky, but it is just beautiful. Like we have the most amazing sunsets here. And we don't have any of the big fancy mountains in the background, kind of a thing, but the light is just beautiful. So come out and see it.
Well, Counselor Krista, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sitting down with me today on your son's birthday or your son's birthday. Is that what you said? I apologize if
Yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
It's your son's
No,
birthday. So I appreciate you doing this. And from everyone who's listening to this, we wish your son a very happy birthday. I know this is going to be coming out in June, but happy birthday to your son. Thank you so much for your, sitting down with us and talking about yourself and the great community of Calmar. So greatly appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipalities here in beautiful Canada. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform or by visiting us on YouTube or following us on all the social media channels. Now, if you want to learn more about the communities and the people that we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Now, your support means the world to us. So share this episode if you can with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we're back with a brand new episode of Cross Border Interviews shortly. Till then, everyone.